Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Dalton Shannon to talk about his new book, Depths. Dalton, thanks for coming on.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be on. Loving talking about the books and meeting new people. It's a good time.
Awesome. Um, and your partner in the book, Wells Thompson, was supposed to be on as well, so you'll have to do a little bit of speaking for him.
Do I
But
have to? Okay.
I guess you don't have to. We could just ignore him. Um, but before we get to depths, I always like to ask creative people to kind of go back to the beginning of their creative journey.
hmm
Like for you, comics, what was your entry point, and when did you decide like I'm gonna go for this?
It happened almost simultaneously. So I grew up on all of the 90s cartoons, Batman, X-Men, Spider-Man, obsessed with the superhero. And when I was about 8, I discovered on what is probably the last spinner rack in existence in the year 2000, a John Romita Jr. Spider-Man comic was just staring me in the face, and I was like, I know Spider-Man. And then I pulled the book off and I was like, you mean I can get this all the time? I don't just have to wait for it to come on TV. And I was hooked with comics ever since. And then about that same time, I discovered Dave Pilkey's Captain Underpants novels, where two 8-year-old boys make their own comic books about their own superhero. And I was like, I'm 8. I can do that. And so I just started making comic books, and I haven't ever really stopped. I definitely lean more into the writing than the drawing these days, but no, it's been comics since I was 8, and they had better work out because there's no plan B.
That's awesome. And of all the comic creators I've talked to over the last few years, you're the first one whose origin story is Captain Underpants.
I have a feeling I might be the only one.
But that's great. That's what it's for. Because I actually
Yeah.
talked to somebody who did. It was something along the lines of 10 perfectly good reasons not to grow up or something like that.
hmm
But it was an adult writing for a younger audience.
Right.
And he loved that because that gave people an entry point into comics and was able to tell stories in a more creative way. I didn't realize Captain Underpants was also made by children.
Well, no, no. So the book is made by Dave Pilkey, who was he was a grown man, but
Oh, okay.
the main characters are two
R8.
eight-year-old boys, and they
Oh, okay.
make
The
their
way
own
you said it, I
comics.
was like, oh, really? It's. I mean, I figured their parents or someone had to have been
No,
involved. It's not just two kids doing their own thing, but
that would have been awesome if they were.
that would
But
have been great. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. Now I sound a little dumb, but that's all right.
no, and now
um,
he's doing the Dogman graphic novels, that are also incredibly popular with kids now. So no, Dave Pilkey's still going.
oh, very cool. Okay, I'll have to look into that a little bit more. Aiming for that younger audience, I think, is
hmm
is great to get kids reading. Is great to get kids into comics because you need the next generation coming in. Otherwise, what's going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dogman is by all accounts the best-selling comic book year in, yeah, like year over year. Dogman's top selling. It just happens to be in like Barnes and Nobles and book fairs rather than comic shops.
Yeah, that was kind of the same thing with the other guy I talked to. Was like he was with Scholastic.
Yes.
So
Scholastic.
comic shops might be dying, but Scholastic's not going anywhere. So that seems like a
Mm,
really good market to be in.
yes. No, the kids tend to like meteor bits of media. So I don't know. At least when it comes to comic books, no kid cares about going in and getting a floppy anymore. They want Dogman. They want the book, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I was uniquely poised to want to ingest my media 20 pages at a time, month over month. So I don't blame a kid for not thinking that's any fun.
Right, yeah. Even in my bigger comic collecting days, I mean, I always liked to collect the individual books because that felt more
hmm
like a comic, but
hmm
I always wanted the trade because it's like
hmm
now I know I have it all. I don't
Right.
want to run a 15 and I'm missing number 9. That would drive me insane.
No, the modern landscape of collecting comics is I, I don't think it's sustainable much anymore, which is sad because I still love going to the shop every Wednesday and grabbing my books. But but I mean, places like Kickstarter, where we're doing depths, is kind of like it's the future of indie publishing for sure, where you can anyone who uh, is interested in the book can actually, put the money forward and fund the book they want to see, rather than just having to pick and choose something off a shelf, more or less. And you get a direct line between you and your audience that way. And I don't know, especially with something like Depths, where it is like a big collection rather than floppies. Because we do both. We've done Frankenstein the Unconquered as floppies, Mechaton as floppies, all through Kickstarter. And it seems like the collected edition is what people gravitate more towards in the realm of crowdfunding and bookstores, all of it. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Like, hit the nail on the head there with things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I think the future of comics is not in having two big and a couple medium and then,
Mhm.
a couple small publishers. I think it really is all about the title rather than who's putting it out.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not to say the talent, but I mean the company.
Right, right. It's so much. I mean, interests and media have just all entered their own niche bubbles now. It's only going to get more niche as the years go on, and people aren't going to be interested in just I don't know, going to a local shop to see what's there. They're going to want their specific interest, and they'll go to the site and they'll support that specific interest, and they're not going to care to, I don't know, venture too far outside of that one way or the other, I would suppose.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right about that. When you were just talking about different titles that you were part of,
Mhm.
which one was first? Like, what was your first real venture into, like, I want to get a comic out in the world?
Well, that I mean, I was doing that since I was 8. I was just hand
Oh, okay.
stapling little ash can, like the little 8-page comics that I would hand draw and do all that stuff for, and I just like give them out to friends and family. But it wasn't until about 2017 when I had gotten so far into the writing sphere of comics, my artistic talent had basically atrophied to the point where I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I had reached a point where I was really good at writing, but I was needing like an artistic partner, and that just wasn't happening. Uh, One, I didn't have the financial ability to pay an artist, and two,
Yeah.
nobody wants to draw my stupid stuff. So I had to hit that stark realization. Was like, well, if I want to do comics, I'm going to have to do it by myself. And so regardless of how crappy it looked, I had to put pen to paper and start drawing the books myself. And that's when I partnered with Wells, my writing partner. I dragged him screaming and kicking into comics. He's more of a literary guy, um, and he learned how to write comics as I was learning how to draw comics again. And we started putting we did it like I was when I was 8. I We made 8-page ash cans that we drew and wrote ourselves, and we took them to conventions, and we were in over our heads, but we knew we just wanted to do the comics. And made a lot of mistakes along the way, but all of those mistakes ended up helping us meet editors and artists and all sorts of great talented people that we've been able to collaborate on and get our foots in the creative landscape. So we met we met an editor at, I believe it was Wizard World New Orleans, back in like 2018 or so, and he looked at the ash cans we made and he's like, "These are great. I can't use this art." And we were like, "Yeah, no, duh, I can't draw." But he was able to hook us up with a lot of great creative talent that he had worked with, and we were able to put out our horror anthology, Descent into Dread, through Caliber Comics in 2020 is when that came out. And then we just kind of kept the train going. We worked with a bunch of artists from Dread to bring other projects to life. We made Mechaton with Fernando Pinto over on Kickstarter. We released those through floppies that actually got picked up by Scout last year, and they'll be publishing the trade later this year. I'm thinking, if we can get 4 and 5 finished in time, that is. And then we brought Frankenstein the Unconquered to Kickstarter with Mary Landro as well. Uh, we just wrapped production on issue 2, and we're going to be doing 4 and 5 later this year as well. And that brings us to Depths, which we're currently running on Kickstarter right now with Jay Chic. And it's been a lot of roller coaster up until then, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool that you have so many projects almost simultaneous. You know,
Mhm.
maybe your book ending or one's, you know, you're lining them up, but
Mhm.
to have your head in that many spaces it's got to be a lot to take on. I mean, not just because you're writing things that are tonally very different, but also like Kickstarter itself is a full time job. So to be able
Yeah,
to,
yeah. Logistically, it's a bit of a nightmare, which is why having a creative partner like Wells is so great because he's really good at the numbers stuff, and he usually takes point on getting those Kickstarters off the ground and going, and he's good with social media, so like it helps me sleep a little better, even though it drives him up a wall. Um, I but yeah, it we wanted to make sure that we could just kind of stretch our muscles through different avenues. We have Mechaton, which is like this lighthearted, all ages, Toonami inspired kind of book, and Frankenstein, which is like this over the top, uh, mature, rated R heavy metal album. And then you've got Depths, which is a literary character piece, which is much more grounded than the other two. And just I don't know. You don't want to get pigeonholed creatively. You don't just want to be known as the horror guy or the humor guy. You want to just kind of show that you can do all of this and gain as much of a foothold in each kind of audience as possible. And then hopefully, if they like your Frankenstein work, they'll want to come check out Depths, or they'll want to hop over to Mechaton or check out Dread, any sort of stuff. That I don't know, that it's been working out pretty well so far.
yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like you made some really good connections early on and like
Mhm.
kind of, you know, pushed through a few doors, which is great to hear. I mean, you got good collaborators, good artists to work with, and then working with distribution because that's the toughest thing for indies.
Oh, no doubt. We're having and we got lucky with Mechaton, Scouts excuse me. Scout seemed to like what we were doing with because it was on Kickstarter first, and Scout seemed to like it, and then they published issue 1 earlier this year. So it was actually in comic shops, which was great. But up until then, we had been doing fulfillment all by ourselves. So we print it and then we ship it out to every single person who backed it, and then we have stock to take to conventions and comic shops and stuff. But no, distribution is the biggest hurdle. Once you actually have a foothold creatively, then it's distribution, and it's a bit of a nightmare, so to speak.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hmm.
So it's probably really nice to have. It's interesting because Scout is doing a book with you, and you also mentioned what was the other company? Sorry,
Caliber.
Caliber.
Hmm.
Was it like did Scout pass on a book, or did Caliber just happen to see the next book and said, "Oh, this looks cool. Looks like it's up our alley." Like,
No, it was is luck, honestly. That editor we met at Wizard World, Andrea. He was a submissions editor for Caliber, and just so happened to, know a bunch of cool creatives that we could collaborate with, and then we had an in for when we wanted to actually pitch to Caliber themselves, and then, lucky enough, a few years later, we run into Andrea again, and he's no longer with Caliber, but he's with Scout. And so
okay,
then we were able to be like, "Hey, we have Mechaton here," and then he was able to bring it to Scout, and we, uh, so yeah, it's luck more than anything, and who you know through luck, I guess. Yeah. So
right.
yeah,
So for other indie creators, go to a Comic Con and make a really good impression with an editor.
like I mean, that's you kind of if you're wanting to try and get I guess noticed on like a publishing level, like if Twitter's not working, conventions are where it's at. Like you have to be prepared to rub elbows,
Mhm.
which Wells is also very good at, and I'm terrible at. I'm just like, oh no, if you want to see the book, come check out the book, but I'm not gonna hound you about it. But Wells is like, no, we got to hound people about it, and
Yeah.
it's thanks to that kind of energy that we're able to work with so many cool people. But yeah, conventions, comic shops, like rubbing elbows is the next most important thing to just having a good book. So yeah, there's a little tidbit of advice for you.
Yeah, and the work must speak for itself
Mm,
because you said you brought it in with art that you weren't really crazy about, and he saw the potential even
hmm.
through that in a visual medium.
Right.
So your story, I mean, you really had something there, clearly.
Yeah. Thankfully, yes. We liked the stories, and we're glad somebody else did, and was able to ignore my crappy art to be like, okay, no, there's something here. Let me give you contact information. So no, we once again got lucky in that regard. You need talent, you need luck, and you need like social skills to be able to navigate any sort of like creative field. And leaning too heavily on any one corner there can kind of imbalance you. But uh, you need a good portion of all three, I would think.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Mhm.
You got to take some credit though, because for him to be able to see your writing through
Yes.
art that was not what you wanted it to be is pretty awesome.
No, we recognize that our stuff had something there, and we're just grateful and lucky that somebody else was able to see it too. And thankfully, people have continued to want it.
So to get to Depths, your
Hmm.
current latest book, it sounds like you have
Yeah.
everything going on at once, but the one you're currently promoting,
Yes.
what was the genesis of it?
Uh, Depths is almost 10 years old at this point.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean a lot of these ideas are like they're in the vault of binders that I have, and Depths was one of them. I was living on my own for the first time, away from friends and family in this like tiny one bedroom apartment, and it was the first for me, and it was the first time I really had to grapple with a lot of depression and anxiety, and I felt stuck and directionless, and then like in this like fever dream of depression, I wrote the first issue of Depths. I just had this image of like this guy in a diving suit underwater, and I was like, okay, what's the story there? And then I wrote it out, but then it just kind of died. I wrote like 4 issues of it, and it was awful and terrible, and it died. Uh, and that's when I started meeting up with Wells more regularly, and we were kind of keeping in touch, kind of workshopping a lot of ideas we had. And I brought up Depths, and Wells seemed to really latch on to it. And he was like, "Can I take a crack at it?" And he was able to actually like see what was missing in Depths and bring it to life and save it. And it was our first collaboration together. It was Wells's first attempt at writing a comic book, which was fun. He comes from, like I said, more literary background. More, he'd done film scripts, but never like comics. So we had to kind of. He was learning how to do that, while I was learning how to get Depths to even function as a story. And yeah, we kind of took it from there. We wrote out the entire series. We've been kind of molding it for the past like 10 years, but it wasn't really a book that you could like bust the doors open with. You couldn't just announce your presence as a creative with like this 230-page literary sad boy piece, and expect people to just like be on board. Like that's why we launched with Mechaton, because it's like fun and it's light and it's energetic, and people can kind of get on board and get it. And now once we've built that audience, we felt like this was the time to really bring Depths out into the world, and hopefully everyone else is on board too.
That's a pretty cool story, and you have this really awesome video on Kickstarter. I mean, we'll put a link to the Kickstarter in the description, but everyone should really go and check it out. And it's a pretty powerful video to launch a comic book.
Yeah, we wanted to really illustrate the weight of the book, because it is a book that deals with a lot of depression, anxiety, grief, and it's also a story about survival and hope. Uh, I mean, the Emil, our main character, gets stranded underwater for 3 years, and his friends on the surface aren't sure if he's even alive. And so, while he's trying to grapple with the weight of being alone that long in an environment that's constantly trying to kill him, uh, we have his friends on the surface trying to come to grips with like the fact that he's probably dead, and if they should even be trying to look for him anymore. Uh, so yeah, it's heavy on both sides, and we wanted the trailer to really convey the weight of that. Uh, and yeah, so Wells did the voice, and I did the edits, and then we put our stupid faces on the end to do the testimonials. But that first minute and a half is solid.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool trailer. I've seen a lot of the Kickstarter videos, and that one is like, in the first 10 seconds, you're leaning closer. You're like, oh, what's going on here? And the story that you tell in the trailer, like, I believed it. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is tragic.
Okay, we're doing our jobs. That's great. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
We're going into film next.
You could. No, that was really cool. So it's also interesting that you are primarily a writer,
Mhm.
and you found a partner to do comics with who's also a writer.
Yeah, we stumbled into that. It we met each other in college in writing classes, so we both knew each other as like accomplished writers, competent at the very least. And the partnership started as, like I said, just workshopping, just having our own ideas and just seeing what the other one thought and could make suggestions to make it better, all sorts of stuff like that. And then it evolved more, and when I finally bit the bullet and said, "Okay, I need to start drawing these books." That's when the partnership kind of solidified, and we were able to like say, "Okay, comics is where we're going." And then Wells with that his acute brain power, his very unique ability to just like see a problem and then work on a solution until it's done, was able to be like, "Okay, well, we know the art's not there, but we know the writing's there, so let's start hunting for collaborators." And so uh, Twitter was just ablaze with talent that we were able to kind of sift through and find uh, some great talent again, I guess. Sorry, I'm a little brain dead at the
No,
um
don't worry about it.
but yeah, can you believe I'm a writer? No. um
Well, you
yeah
get to edit.
yeah, and we found some great people to work with, who've become great friends, as well. And there's a great community of indie comics on Twitter. Everyone's always looking for work and always willing to, offer a hand, to even if it's just to do a variant cover or a print or something. Um, so yeah, it doesn't seem like it would work on the surface, and a lot of times it doesn't. But when it does, having two writers as the team, I mean, heck, we've made it this far, dang it.
No, I wasn't knocking the two writers thing. I think that's really cool because I find when I'm writing something, I'll hit a wall, and I'll bring it
Mhm,
up to my wife, or I do a comic also, and I primarily write the scripts, but we both break the story. We don't have to get into
mhm,
my whole thing, but I'll call the guy who does the drawing and be like, "Yeah, I'm stuck here." And whenever I talk to somebody on the outside, 9 times out of 10, it's the most obvious. Like, oh, just have this, do this, do this. It's like, oh,
mhm,
of course. Why didn't I see that? But it just helps to have that sounding board. I,
absolutely.
I was just a little bit surprised because when I saw like, oh, it's Dalton and Wells, they have this new comic coming out. The traditional is like one guy writes, one guy draws.
Mhm, and
But it's cool that.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's really nice to have that partnership that is basically having a really competent editor on your payroll for free, because like we both trust each other to make really good scripts. But when something's not working, we each kind of help balance each other's strengths and weaknesses. Like Wells is great at the thematic through lines, actually building the story beat by beat, and I'm great at momentum and big moments and dialogue. So and then we're both really good at crafting characters. So it ends up like if something doesn't seem to be working on one draft of the script, the other person comes in and is like, okay, well, here's what we can do to make it better. And 9 times out of 10, it becomes better. Uh, we don't fight as much as we used to when it comes to creative decisions. But I mean, hey, that's what the partnership's for. There's a little friction at every stage.
Yeah, that's funny. So for the Kickstarter itself,
Hmm.
this is clearly not your first Kickstarter. What are your tiers and your offerings? I don't know. Now I'm blanking
Yeah,
on the words.
yeah. The reward tiers. We've got a pretty good selection. At least I think so. You can always get if you're not feeling like grabbing the entire, because This is book 1 of Depths, so you get the first half of the story. It's 112 pages, I believe. Uh, but if you're not feeling that frisky, you can always jump in for $10 and grab the first chapter. You're getting 28 pages digitally, and you get that nice sampling of Depths. And you can always grab a copy at a later time, especially on later Kickstarters. We always offer everything we do on each successive Kickstarter. Um, but for just $10 more, you get the digital copy of the entire book itself. Um, we have the physical copy in paperback with the J Sheet cover, as well as a variant by Serge Acuna, who was actually the guy we worked. Serge was one of the guys we met on Descent into Dread. We had a story called I think it was the Descent or something along those lines. But we took the characters from Depths and put them in like a fantasy horror setting, and Serge drew that. And we were like, it'd be a great homage to have Serge come back and actually do like a cover for the real Depths. So he's back on the variant cover, and it's excellent. It has a meal against a kraken, more or less. Um, but then we jump up to our hardcover tier, where Heather Vaughn has designed this great, like, psychedelic, haunting hardcover. Heather actually does our main covers for Frankenstein the Unconquered. So if you're a fan of those covers, this is the one you're going to want to grab as well. Heather's phenomenal. It's so good. And of course, all these tiers come with like a digital copy of the book as well. We have a collector's tier where you can get all the covers. We have an everything tier that comes with a great print by Tina Zola, Descent into Dread itself, uh, stickers and pins of our octopus named Douglas, who is like our, for lack of a better term, our dog. Our golden retriever for the book is Douglas. There's a commission tier. There are draw me in tiers. So there's quite a bit to grab on the campaign if you're feeling frisky. A lot of add-ons. You can grab Frankenstein and Mechaton and all sorts of good stuff. So hopefully we've got a little something for everybody in that regard.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That sounds really well thought out.
We're trying, man. We're trying.
You say that, but this is like your third or fourth big title you've mentioned. You've done successful Kickstarters. You've been working with distributors. Like, you're not trying, you're doing it.
We're doing it. It's just this happens to be our the Kickstarter we're probably the most passionate about, and also the biggest goal we've ever attempted. Like 20 grand is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a lot of going on shows and promoting on Twitter, and like it's a battle to try and get to that funding, but we wouldn't have launched it as it is if we didn't believe we could do it, and that this was the time to do it. So if you're watching, go back Depths, man. It's cool.
And I saw you got the Kickstarters, what do they call it? Favorite projects.
Oh,
so
the project
awesome.
we love. We finally find. God, what's a guy got to do to get that thing? Well, this is our 7th Kickstarter, and then just now they deign to give us the project we love status. So no, that came completely unexpectedly. It actually happened while we were live on another stream. We noticed that we were a project we love, so that was really cool. And
Yeah.
we're very thankful for the exposure.
That's awesome. It's got to be a big boost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's helping us so far. We like it.
How far along is the 112-page version of Depths?
How far? Oh, so what you see on the campaign page is what we have so far. So we've got the covers and we have the first 5 pages completely done. That's what the campaign is for, is to fund the project itself.
Complete it, yeah.
So that's usually how we do our campaigns. We'll have like the first few sample pages, so you get a feel for what the book's going to be like, and then once we get funded, that's when the whole process of constructing the book actually begins. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So once that's in, we can actually afford to pay Jay to draw the book, and roundabouts next year probably you'll be getting your hands on Depths book 1, and then we'll launch right into Depths book 2.
Awesome. Aside from Kickstarter, which is probably where everyone should be going first,
Mhm.
is there anything else you wanted to promote, like your socials, or if you have a like your own brand website or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me on any social media that matters at Dalton K. Shannon if I remember to post on there. Social media is a bit of a blight, and I try to stay away as much as possible.
Agreed.
But I also have a website, daltonkshannon.com, where updates happen a little more frequently. And we also have a newsletter, which is at one of the pinned bits on my Twitter, Comics, Cats, and Cocktails, where every month you get a little missive about what we're working on, what books we're reading, uh, cocktail recipes, cat photos, all like you get the whole shebang. So if you like what you see or you're a super fan, that is where you want to really subscribe to get like the most insider stuff for what we're working on.
That's awesome. Well, Dalton, thank you for taking the time out to come on and
Yeah,
talk to me about your comic journey so far in depth. And it sounds like you got a lot going on, which is great.
yeah, always staying busy. It's always great. But thanks for so much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, yeah, really appreciate it. And anytime you want to do it again, just let us know because I'm sure
Hell
you got
yeah.
something else cooking.
It's wizard, man. It's so wizard.
Perfect. Thanks.